everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to film my review of the Book Naturalist Book Club pick for the month of June. So in June, we read A Sting in the Tail, My Adventures with Bumblebees by Dave Ghoulson. And this is a book that was first published in 2012 or 2013, maybe 2013. And Dave Ghoulson is a well-known entomologist from the UK. He does a lot of research on bees specifically. And he is also the founder of the Bumblebee Conservation Trust, as it says right here on the cover, which is talked about quite a bit in the book. He talks about how that came to be, how he came to be involved in a nonprofit, and what the Bumblebee Conservation Trust does. Super interesting. But this entire book, which is about 240 pages long, is all about bumblebees, because that's where his interest primarily lies, and the research that he has been conducting over the course of his career has focused a lot on bumblebees. He also talks about the fact that he's from the UK, lives in the UK, teaches at university in the UK, and he bought some property in France, like a rural farm property. And he's currently involved in restoration of wildflower meadows, like bringing back the original state of this property. So, and without fertilization, without intervention, farming, planting crops or anything like that, and just allowing native wildflower plants to propagate, because bumblebees are very dependent upon wildflowers for food, and those flowers are dependent on the bees for pollination. So like this commensal relationship that they have. Everybody thinks about honeybees in terms of pollination, and honeybees are involved in pollination, but bumblebees are much more involved in pollination. So it's so interesting, this book. It talks about like how many different species of bumblebees exist around the world, like thousands and thousands. I'm remembering 25,000, and that I may be pulling that number out of nowhere, but I'm sure it's thousands of species. He talks about how climate change and changes to habitat have impacted populations of bumblebees, the bumblebees that we know that have gone extinct, and those that we know are in danger of becoming extinct or threatened, and how we can bring back populations of bumblebees. He talks about restoration efforts around the world. He particularly talks about some efforts between the UK and New Zealand, and efforts to introduce or reintroduce bumblebee species between those two countries, because when there was first contact with Europeans from Australia and New Zealand, Europeans brought bumblebees with them, and those bumblebees have in some cases colonized themselves in New Zealand and Australia, and in some cases those same bumblebees no longer exist in the UK, and so they started a project to try to reintroduce the bumblebees that originally came from the UK and no longer survive in the UK, and they are currently surviving in New Zealand, trying to bring those back. And it's super complicated because of the seasons. The seasons are opposite between the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere, obviously. And so trying to get a species that hibernates in the winter to survive that transplant is very complex in the case of bumblebees, and has to do with, how they hibernate and what they eat and all these sorts of things. So very fascinating stuff. And I would say that all of this information is provided to you in a way that is very accessible. Dave Ghoulson talks about things in a very conversational way, in a way that makes you engaged in the topics, and it doesn't feel like a scientific dissertation. And in fact, he talks about how, in this book, he talks about how scientists sometimes inadvertently or on purpose lock up their information in ways that nobody can access, whether that's because most data and research is published in scientific articles which are, hidden behind paywalls or cost a lot of money for you to get access to, and they're not written in a way that's accessible to people who aren't trained in the scientific jargon. And Ghoulson has made it part of his career to make that information more available to the general public in order to get people excited about nature and excited about protecting species like bumblebees that are so important to our world. I just think he does it right. He knows how to do scientific communication, and people could take a look at his way that he talks about the stuff that he studies in his research and apply that, across the board. This is how we need to get the public informed about things that are important to everyone about science, and like not lock it all up in only in communications that only make sense to the people who are studying that specific topic of information. So I'm on board with his thinking in that way. I, of course, marked some things, and I will read a little section here so that you can understand the kind of writing style that Dave Ghoulson has. I need to put on my reading glasses, because I will tell you that the font in my edition is not not great. So I'm going to read you this section, even though it is about honeybees. And this book is mainly about bumblebees, as I've said, but I find this section so funny, and I think you will find it funny as well. So, unlike bumblebees, honeybee queens mate a dozen or so times, all during a single nuptial flight made early in life. Each young queen releases a pheromone which is enormously attractive to the males, known as drones, who eagerly swarm after her. They mate in midair, the male grasping the female's abdomen with his claspers and then explosively squirting sperm into her. This explosion produces an audible pop and ruptures the male's genitalia, usually causing fatal damage so that he falls to the ground and quickly expires, leaving behind fragments of his genitalia still attached to the queen. She continues her flight and is swiftly mounted by a second male who scrapes off the remains of his predecessor before repeating the process. The new queen continues until she has stored enough sperm for a lifetime of egg production, at which point she returns to the nest, leaving behind a trail of dead lovers. So lest you think science cannot be exciting, I encourage you to read anything by Dave Ghoulson, but specifically A Sting in the Tail. This was an excellent read. The chapters are all divided up into either different projects that he was involved in or different species of bumblebees. And so it's always like every chapter is something a little bit new, so it doesn't feel repetitive, and it just is delightful to read about. I highly encourage you all to pick this up. I had not read this book before this year. So, we're embarked on a year of rereading our favorite books, our favorite nature writing books, because it's our 5-year anniversary of the book club. And this is one of Doris's absolute favorites. And I had not yet read it. And so I am so delighted that I have now read it, and it was a 5-star read for me. So definitely recommend that one if you have not yet read it. And then in July, we will be going back to another favorite of mine, one that I have read in the past, I Contain Multitudes, The Microbes Within Us and a Grander View of Life by Ed Yong, who is the winner of the Pulitzer Prize. And this book is fabulous in my memory. So I'm hoping that it will retain its, its level of, I hope I retain my level of enthusiasm for that I had in the first read. Ed Yong, one of my favorite science writers. Again, another science writer who knows how to get information out there in a way that is available to all readers. So yeah, that's what we'll be reading for July. Please let me know in the comments down below if you read A Sting in the Tail this month with us, or if you are interested now in reading it, and if you plan to read I Contain Multitudes with us in July. I hope you're all doing well and finding some great books to read. I will talk to you later.